Hi, I'm Jamie DiDomenico with Cool Plumbing and Energy Today. On today's show, we're going to be talking about hiring the right contractor. How do you know who to hire for a job that you need done in your home? We're here with Frank Pellegrino from 5-Star Home Services Review, otherwise known as the Green Book. And Frank's company evaluates independent contractors for homeowners and recommends them through this book, which they distribute twice annually, correct?
3 times.
3 times annually,
Right.
to homes on the West Coast, all over Florida. So, Frank, welcome. How are you?
Very good. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
The reason I had you is because I know how difficult the selection process was when I first signed up many years ago with your company. So why don't you talk a little bit about the process you do when you're selecting a contractor?
Right on the cover of the book, it tells you we've done the research for you. And what that entails is a 5-star process, we call it, but there's actually about 10 different things we look at. We look at things like an Experience Smart Business Report, and that'll tell us such things as if the business has had bankruptcies, liens, judgments, things of that nature. We look at the sunbiz.org, State Division of Corporations, tells us if a business is active and compliant with the state.
Many home services require licensing and insurance, and the state regulates a lot of our licenses as well. So you could find all our information on sunbiz.org. So
Sure.
That's a great tip.
Great tool. Another thing we use is the Better Business Bureau. It'll tell us how many complaints they've had in a 3-year period. A lot of businesses will get complaints, but what we look for, especially there, even if they've only had 1 or 2 complaints, is that they're resolving those complaints, getting back with the consumer. And I'm sure you've dealt with the Better Business Bureau before.
Yes.
And it's important that if there is a concern on the consumer's part, that the company does respond and get back to them with a resolution.
That's a good point. The BBB is also a great source. They do accumulate complaints on companies. We have about 11 or 12 over a 3-year period, but we probably did about 150,000 transactions over that same period. So we've resolved, I think, almost all of them.
Something else we look at is years in business. We try not to take any companies that are less than 5 years old. We want to see a track record of success and customer service and satisfied customers with these.
You check the BBB, you check the licensing sources, and then you check their credit. That's pretty comprehensive for the company.
Right. We want to make sure that their philosophy is the consumer comes first. They're there to take care of the consumer.
Okay, so let's compare, to other, there's Angie's List, and there's now Amazon is offering a service, and Porch and Home Depot. What kind of background checks do they do versus what you do? How would you compare and contrast?
Angie's List is a great service. They provide a window into the business with consumer reviews. That's primarily what they do. We provide that also, and even in our book, the profile that we provide has consumer reviews right down the right-hand side of the page. That's part of what we do, but we do much more than that. We go 8 or 10 steps farther than that.
Well, Angie's List doesn't run a credit report or anything.
No, they don't run an Experience, and we don't run a credit report per se. It is an Experience Smart Business Report. Again, that tells us if there's liens, judgments, bankruptcies. I'm sure you don't want to hire a contractor that had a bankruptcy 2 years ago. That's very suspect. That can happen to anybody, but we prefer not to have that as part of our profile.
When a customer has absolute faith in a company, to me that is the pinnacle of great service.
It's the integrity of the whole operation. There's a feeling of trust.
I wouldn't trade them for nothing. You couldn't pay me to go to another company because I just don't think you're going to get that quality, that professionalism, and the peace of mind to know when you're done, you don't have to worry about anything.
Cool Today, your Carrier Factory authorized dealer.
So Frank, What steps do you recommend a homeowner take in going through, besides using your book or going to some other third-party source? What steps do you recommend?
Well, I always recommend that people get referrals, not only from friends and neighbors, but if they're looking to hire a company, ask for referrals from that company. They could also look for reviews on the internet, and go into the BBB. Those are 3 small steps they can do to point them in the right direction of hiring a good contractor.
Do you find a lot of homeowners don't take more than one step other than get a name or a referral, and they don't investigate companies? Do they?
Yeah, and I actually read an article years ago that I think only like 17% of consumers even look at the Better Business Bureau as a tool. A lot of people will take traditional advertising, just look at that. I've heard the name so many times before and just pick them. And when they're looking at spending thousands of dollars in some cases with a product like yours, buyer beware.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. So what warning signs are there if you bring somebody in that they should be watching out for, even if you do some research and say things aren't going right, or what?
You know, red flags for us where we won't even touch a company and we get approached by a lot of companies that want to be in our product, and we turn them down all day long. Years in business, that's a red flag when they haven't been in business that long. When they can't provide referrals, that's another red flag. When you check out their website, see what kind of website they have, if they have a website at all. Some don't have a website at all. Some you can't find on sunbiz.org. Some you can't find any report with the Better Business Bureau. So when we see a pattern, we can't find information on them. They may be a great company, but we can't find anecdotal evidence that they are a great company. We don't touch them.
If I'm not carrying the proper insurance, the homeowner could be responsible for an injured worker on their job. So
Absolutely.
making sure they have insurance and
That's
and
another thing.
licensing.
Make sure they have their proper professional licensing, like with plumbers, air conditioners, electricians. We provide all those contractor numbers in our book. You want to make sure they have workman's comp insurance. Liability insurance, and we provide that information in our book also. So it's real important that you look for all those pieces of information before hiring a contractor.
It's really unfortunate when I see stories of especially older citizens that get hoodwinked into some bad deals. So it's good for them to have a good, reliable source as well, whether it be a neighbor or a relative or a third-party source, rather than just hiring based on advertising or name recognition.
Absolutely, and
It's hard to believe I'm saying that, but it's true.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen. I actually was a technician years ago, and was in homes and saw some consumer ripoffs, and it's a shame. Some people aren't honest, and they're there just to take advantage and just there for the money. So it's important that people look at the backgrounds of these companies and make sure they're honest and forthright.
Frank, thank you very much for all your help.
I appreciate
and we
it.
appreciate it, and we look to get the Green Book in our mailboxes 3 times a year.
Right, and we're also available on the internet at 5starrated.com. If a consumer wants to go there, it's totally free of charge, and we have our contractors listed there with all their information on their businesses.
So, in summary, the best thing you could do is go to BBB, look at sunbiz.org for licensing, get referrals, years in business, find out about the company, find out about other jobs they've done, references. So these are all good things when you're looking to hire a contractor for a job if you currently don't have a relationship. So, the buyer is always the best consumer when they're knowledgeable, in my opinion. So thank you, Frank, for all this great information.
Thanks for having me.
Cool Today in the last 50 years has evolved from a small town oil furnace new construction company in the 60s into a multi-trade world-class service organization. It's really primarily due to hiring great people.
I want you to remember not just me, but the company that I work for.
Whether you get a plumber, an electrician, an AC guy, we treat each customer the same way.
Plumbing Today, proudly offering our $99 drain cleaning 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the Cool Plumbing and Energy Today Home Show Half Hour. Thank you for joining us. Earlier we talked to Frank Pellegrino from Home Services Review about how to qualify a company. My next guest is Ed Marchicelli from Ask the Seal, and his services takes it a step further. So, welcome, Ed.
Glad to be here.
How are you?
Very good, thanks.
So, I was intrigued a few years ago when you introduced your product to our company. Why don't you give us some background on how you came up with the concept of Ask the Seal?
Sure. So I was in the air conditioning and plumbing business, and we background checked every employee we hired. And we routinely interviewed people that went through the process, and the hiring manager liked them, the HR manager liked them, I would meet and like them, and they seemed trustworthy. And we'd get to the phase where we did the background check, and we found some people that had some really scary backgrounds. I mean, you're talking, we had one guy with 3 burglary convictions, defrauding the elderly, and credit card fraud, and the company he worked for advertised on their website everywhere, we background check every employee. We interviewed a guy from a plumbing competitor that had some really nasty convictions. He was 6 months out of the federal penitentiary working for our biggest home service plumbing competitor. And again, so I felt that we were doing the background checks and doing what was right for the customer to keep them safe, but the customer really didn't know who was telling the truth or not. You know, the other companies claimed to do that, even when they didn't or didn't care. And I thought, you know, I need something like a good housekeeping seal of approval that tells people, yes, this person was background checked. I wanted a certificate from the background check company. It didn't exist, so we created it about 6.5 years ago.
So I was early on, I signed up for it because I wanted my customers to be assured that our people were background checked. Yes. Background check is one of those things that everybody advertises a 24-hour service, but they really don't respond after a certain hour, or they advertise that they're bonded, and they're not really bonded. They might be licensed, they advertise license, but then they advertise background checked employees. And that's one of the things that I thought I knew the same thing you did, being an insider, that I would turn away an employee because they couldn't qualify under my background check policies.
Right.
And I find out they're working for a competitor who obviously just needed people.
Right.
And my concern was the consumer. So your service verifies all these things.
Yes. So our clients can actually send their customer an email from our server verifying, with a picture of the person, verifying the date of their last background check and actually a bio of the person. And then we also issue photo ID cards verifying that the person has passed our background check. And there's a little QR code on the badge that if the customer scans it, takes them to proof of background check on our server.
So yes, we use that service, and there are other contractors across the country that use the service. So these are contractors that said, hey, I want to make sure my people are background checked every year.
Yes.
As opposed to just at hire.
Yes. So we manage a roster of employees, and we manage the date of their last background check. If they're still working for the company a year later, we automatically rerun the background check and then reissue the badges, or if there's a problem, you know, let the company know, and they don't get a badge.
Something could happen without an employer knowing about it.
It does. I had a painter that had an employee that passed their first year, and we came around to renewal time, and he had a warrant out for his arrest for home invasion in Ohio, and this was a Florida company. And I called the owner, and the owner said, yeah, he was on vacation in Ohio 6 months ago, and the owner never would have known.
You know, a friend of mine once said, you know, Florida is one of the few states where people come to run away from something or run to something.
Yes.
And that's a little scary when you're a homeowner, and you know, you might check out a company that's been around a long time, but you don't know if they're doing their due diligence on the people they're sending into your home.
Well, that's the problem. And when people say, what is a standard background check, there is no standard background check, and there's no definition of a background check. And especially in the home services and the more blue-collar trades, my experience has been that probably about 80% of the companies are not doing background checks, what I would call a background check, although 90% of them are claiming to. And it really is a range of things. Some of them just flat out lie and don't do it. Some of them, let's say here in Sarasota, their office administrator just goes to Sarasota County's website and does a search on that name. And some people might do an FDLE check,
Which is the
Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
Does that check nationally?
No, we had a client that signed up for our service that had previously done background checks and said all of our people will pass. And they had a man who raped a woman in Virginia, did his time in Virginia. He was not in the FDLE database. He came up under our national search, and he came up under our national sex offender search. But he paid for background check, and he thought this person was fine because all he was getting an FDLE check.
So do you have situations when you go to, you sign up a company and you check all their employees, and they find out something they didn't know?
Yes.
How's that? How do you handle that as a company, and how does the owner of that company deal with it?
So yeah, so it's uncomfortable, you know, and especially if that person has worked there a long time. Hopefully that's a large company that potentially has a new construction division, because we don't require people that go to a construction site to be background checked. I mean, we recommend you do it and know who's working for you, but they're not going into a home, they're not handling people's credit cards. If it's not a company that has that option, that they either need to let that person go, put them in a non-consumer facing role, or opt out of our service. And it happens. I mean, I can tell you many stories about companies who just said, you know, this person is a good technician, and I mean, just some scary stuff. And they say he's one of our best technicians, and they're not willing to let him go. And I said, that's your prerogative, but you're not going to participate in our program. So they are not in the program, period, because of that one employee.
You know, somebody told me a statistic, I'm not sure if it was you, about the prisons. They actually train trades in the prisons. Like
Yes.
Carpentry is a popular trade.
Yes.
So when convicts come out, they're employable.
Yes, and the refrigeration is the number one trade that people learn in prison, which is air conditioning. And I think, you know, they don't distinguish and say this person is convicted of this kind of crime, so they should be going into new construction. And I think there's an assumption that if we teach this person refrigeration and they've got a really bad record, that they're probably going into new construction. But they get out of prison and they're just applying for jobs. And if the company doesn't do their due diligence, they could be hiring somebody really bad, you know, that's got a really bad history to go into somebody's home.
So along with background checks, I mean, is also drug testing. A lot of companies advertise they do drug testing, not necessarily to consumers, but to insurance companies.
Right.
And that's one of my pet peeves. I do random checks every month, and we do pre-hire and post-accident and all that stuff. Is there a correlation between people that don't do drug background checks and don't do drug screening? Is the same thing or different?
Yeah, if they don't do background screening, they usually don't do drug screening either. And then you've got some people who do criminal background checks that might not do the drug screening. But yeah, if they don't do background checks, they probably don't do drug screening either. And there's a big correlation. You know, I look, we've been doing this for almost 7 years, and I look at these background reports. And there are so many, you see so many drug convictions and arrests, but there are so many other crimes that come in hand with that, one being theft. You know, they have to feed that addiction, and they have to get the money somewhere. And so there's a lot of other crimes that are related to that other than just the drug crime. So it's important to know, you know, and you've got guys that, you know, they're on the straight and narrow when they're not on drugs. But when they're on drugs, they get in all kinds of trouble.
So there is a correlation.
Absolutely.
At Cool Plumbing and Energy Today, taking care of business, or TCB, is really about helping others get the best from today. So for us, TCB is really TCP, taking care of people.
Taking care of people when their AC breaks down at 1 in the morning.
Or by supporting those who provide vital care in the community.
We love taking care of people so much, we're celebrating in different ways throughout the community. So join the celebration today at tcptoday.com. Carrier, turn to the experts.
So tell me what the difference between what you do and, say, what Angie's List does on background checks, or Porch, or Home Advisor.
Sure. So, well, they're all different, but I'm not a member of Angie's List. But what I know about it is they do a background check on the owner or manager, relevant manager. That's not the person usually coming to your home.
No.
It's usually not the person handling your credit card back at the office. So, I mean, it's nice to know that the owner of the company doesn't have a violent history or theft-related history. I'd be more concerned about the person actually coming into my home. I don't expect them to do that anytime soon. And contrary to popular belief, companies do pay Angie's List. It's a large part of their revenue, and I believe if they were to do what we did, 80% plus of those companies probably wouldn't qualify.
So in today's economy, where things are being done more on the internet, there's people are hiring people through other services. How do they know the person coming into their home that they're going to be safe with that person? Whether it be there's not going to be any violence, or not going to be defrauded of anything. I mean, those are two very important things.
Yeah, and it would sound self-serving, but I don't know of another service like ours that verifies the background check, because people claim to background check when they don't. They don't do a proper background check a lot of the times. Even when a company does a proper background check, if they don't have a written policy, the hiring manager just can hire the person anyway. So what does it mean to say we did a background check when the hiring manager hires the person anyway? With Ask the Seal, we have a published criteria that says this person will only get a badge if they've not been convicted of one of these crimes. And it's published, and we follow it. And so if that person has one of these badges and they get that email from an Ask the Seal company, a sealed company that says, here's the guy's date of background check, here's his seal of security and confidence, they can be confident that person has been background checked in the last 12 months and that they've passed our published criteria. The customers, when they have a problem in their home, and say it's an air conditioning problem, they don't immediately think about who's coming to my house. They think, how much is this going to cost me, and when can you get here? And they're not necessarily thinking about who's coming to my house. They're not thinking that far ahead. And when the doorbell rings and they open the door, that's when they think, oh gosh, I've got to let this guy into my home. And they don't think about it until that doorbell rings and they come. Okay. When they get that email with the photo and proof of background check at time of appointment, all of a sudden they realize, oh yes, this person is coming into my home. Am I going to babysit him the whole time? Am I going to be by myself when he's home? If I'm booking it, is my wife going to be home alone? So all those concerns that you don't realize until the time comes, when they get that email, they realize it. So we found that a lot of times when a customer gets that email with the photo and proof of background check, they just stop calling other companies. Or if they call another company and they don't get that same warm and fuzzy, they say, you know what, I'm going to go with Cool Today, because it's a known quantity. I know who's coming to my house. I've got his picture. I know he's safe. And why take a risk with somebody else in your home?
So what about the people who knock on the door of somebody or telemarket and say, we're in your area, we happen to be in your area, we're offering a special, or somebody knocks on your door and says, can I trim your trees, or
yes,
do some handyman work?
So we have a piece called Front Door Safety Tips that if anyone wants, they can email us at info@asktheseal.com. It's totally free, and we'll give it to you. We get people ask for it all the time. They share it with their families, and it really goes into specific details about that. If you get somebody that knocks on the door, do not open the door. I mean, you don't know who that person is. You need a camera and/or intercom or some sort of security door or a window that you can talk to the person through. If you can't understand them or hear them, don't open the door. If you have somebody solicit you by phone and say, we're in your area, in general, those aren't good companies. If for some reason you're inclined to do business with that company, call that company back, not at the phone number the person called you at, but look them up on the internet, find that company number, verify that person works for the company and sets their own appointments before you ever let them into your home. But in general, those aren't the best companies to do business with in general. But it's a scary world out there, and people don't realize that criminals use their employment to find their victims. I mean, it's the easiest way. You can go out and look into people's windows, but a neighbor's going to see you and call the police. Why not get a job in home services where you're invited into the home and you can see what's there, where the windows and doors are, whether they have a dog.
Okay, Ed, you're starting to scare the heck out of me now.
I tell people, make sure you put in your bathroom, if you've got narcotics, any powerful painkillers. If you're going to let someone use your bathroom, do not have those in the medicine cabinet. We had some carpet cleaners that actually cleaned some ladies' carpets. They used the bathroom. They saw some narcotics. They went back 6 months later. They needed drugs, and they remembered these ladies had them, and they stole the drugs and killed the 2 ladies 6 months after they cleaned their carpets.
A Cool Today in the last 50 years has evolved from a small town oil furnace new construction company in the 60s into a multi-trade world-class service organization. It's really primarily due to hiring great people.
I want you to remember not just me, but the company that I work for.
Whether you get a plumber, an electrician, an AC guy, we treat each customer the same way.
Plumbing Today, proudly offering our $99 drain cleaning 24 hours a day.
Okay, so Ed, you started Ask the Seal how many years ago?
Almost 7.
7 years ago, based on your experiences working for a home service provider and observing the other competition, and a lot of competition. It's all about doing it cheaper.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is there's companies that do things right, and there's companies that cut corners. And generally the companies that cut corners everywhere. So they cut corners on the people they hire, they cut corners on their insurance, maybe licensing, and just the training of the people. So, if you cut corners in one place, you're likely cutting corners everywhere.
Yes. Well, an old-time friend of mine in the service business said, you can get service, you can get quality, you can get price, pick any two.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's just a testament to that. So your company's AskTheSeal.com.
Yes.
And customers can go on and see what companies in their area are part of your
Yes, it's
membership.
AskTheSeal.com. It's completely free. We don't ask you for a credit card. We don't ask you for an email address. We simply just say what's the trade you're looking for and what's your zip code, and we'll show you companies that we've qualified. We've verified their license and insurance. We get listed as a certificate holder on their insurance, so we know if it's canceled. And all of those companies can send you an email with a photo of the person coming to your home. The people handling your credit card back at the office are background checked. The person that shows up is going to have a photo ID badge verifying their check. You can just feel safe letting that person.
Well, I know
into your
our
home.
customers rely on it very much, and you do great work out there, so keep it up, and thank you for being here today.
Great, thanks. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So today we spoke with Frank Pellegrino from Home Services Review about how to screen and how to select the proper contractor for your home or job. And then we talked with Ed from Ask the Seal about what he does for those contractors in checking their background checking their employees, sending an email to your home on who's coming to your home to do your work, and to see the proper background screening for that particular employee. So there's great options out there for you as a homeowner today. Do your research, make sure your company does background check their employees, and be safe and comfortable. See you next time.